My adult stepson sued me for an empire he never built, and the moment his lawyer saw my name on the defense papers, the room went silent. I didn't raise my voice when the court notice arrived. I didn't tear the envelope open in anger. I read every word slowly, like a man rereading a letter he already expected. He claimed I manipulated his mother. He claimed I stole control of the company. He claimed I forced my way into a legacy that was never meant for me. What hurt wasn't the lawsuit. What hurt was how confident he sounded while lying. By the time the papers reached me, the story had already spread. Family friends, old partners, even people who once shook my hand with respect, they all believed the same thing. That I was the quiet man who waited patiently, only to take everything. I let them believe it, because the truth was more dangerous than their assumptions. My stepson was 28, smart on paper, charming when it benefited him, and raised around wealth without ever learning what it costs. He didn't remember the nights when the company almost collapsed. He didn't remember the lawsuits we barely survived. He didn't remember who stayed when everyone else ran. He only remembered the outcome, and he wanted it handed to him like an inheritance he thought was overdue. When his lawyer filed the motion to freeze company assets, I smiled. Not because I wasn't afraid, but because I knew something he didn't. You don't sue a man who helped build your mother's empire without first understanding why he never needed his name on the door. That silence he heard in the courtroom later was not fear. It was recognition. People assume revenge looks loud. Raised voices, public humiliation, angry confrontations. That's how young men think. Older men know better. I met his mother when the company was still a risk, not a legacy. No polished offices, no awards on the wall, just long days, unpaid bills, and decisions that kept us awake at night. She trusted me before she loved me. That mattered more. I never demanded control, never asked for ownership. I stayed where I was most useful. Quiet, unnoticed, essential. Her son watched from a distance. He saw results, not process, and over time, silence turned into suspicion. He believed patience meant weakness. He believed restraint meant guilt. So when his mother's health declined, he moved quickly. Lawyers, advisors, people who spoke fast and charged more than they delivered. He told her it was just protection. He told her I would understand. I did understand. That's when I began preparing. I didn't warn him. I didn't confront him. I let him build confidence on incomplete information. Every signature he collected, every document he filed, every accusation he sharpened, they all pushed him closer to a truth he wasn't ready to face. The lawsuit wasn't the betrayal. The betrayal was thinking. I hadn't already planned for it. When the court date was set, his lawyer was proud, young, aggressive, certain the case would end quickly. He didn't know my name had already crossed his desk before, years ago, in a different case, with a very different outcome. By the time he realized it, his confidence was already too loud to pull back. The morning of the hearing, I arrived early. Not to intimidate, not to make a statement. I wanted to observe. My stepson avoided my eyes. Not out of guilt, out of certainty. He thought I was already defeated. That's the danger of underestimating quiet men. You mistake calm for surrender. The judge reviewed the filings, the asset freeze request, the accusations of manipulation and control. Then my attorney stood. No emotion, no speeches, just documents, agreements signed years before, safeguards quietly embedded, contingency plans activated the moment trust broke. The lawyer across the room stopped smiling, not because he lost confidence, but because he recognized preparation. He whispered to my stepson for the first time that morning, urgently, carefully. I watched realization replace arrogance, not all at once, but piece by piece. That was the moment I knew the story would not end in court. It would end in understanding. Because real revenge isn't about taking something back. It's about allowing someone to finally see what they chose to ignore. And this was only the beginning. The story didn't begin with the lawsuit. It began years earlier, when trust still felt natural and silence still meant peace. I entered that family without expectations. No hunger for control, no hunger for legacy. I had already lived a full life before meeting her. She was a woman who carried authority without raising her voice. Her company reflected that. Disciplined, precise, built on decisions made quietly, not loudly. Her son was already grown when I arrived, an adult, educated, used to comfort. He never asked me directly what role I played. He observed, measured, collected assumptions. At dinners, he spoke about vision and growth. At meetings, he spoke about expansion, but he never stayed long enough to see consequences. I stayed. Not because I wanted recognition, but because stability requires presence. I handled what others avoided. Legal complications, long negotiations, unpopular decisions that protected the company from itself. I wasn't the face of the empire. I was the spine. That kind of role attracts resentment, especially from those who believe titles matter more than function. Over time, his questions became sharper. Less curiosity, more inspection. He wanted to know why his mother consulted me before final decisions, why certain documents bore my signature beside hers, why executives listened when I spoke, even without authority. I never defended myself. I never explained. People who demand explanations rarely accept the truth. The company grew, quietly, relentlessly. Awards came later. Public recognition followed success, not effort. By then, I had already stepped back. Let younger voices speak. Let leadership rotate. That should have reassured him. Instead, it unsettled him. To a man obsessed with control, voluntary distance looks like deception. His mother trusted process. He trusted optics. When her health began to decline, the balance shifted, not dramatically, subtly. Doctor's visits, longer rests, shorter workdays. That's when his presence increased. He framed it as concern, support, preparation. I recognized strategy. He suggested restructuring, suggested legal cleanups, suggested removing unnecessary intermediaries. He never said my name. He didn't have to. I watched him recruit advisors who spoke his language, fast, confident, unburdened by history. They asked questions designed to produce suspicion. They highlighted my access without acknowledging responsibility. I answered only what was required, nothing more. Silence frustrates those who rely on pressure. The more I stepped back, the more he convinced himself I was hiding something. That belief became the foundation of his courage. The final shift happened quietly. One afternoon, his mother handed me a folder. Not dramatically, not emotionally. Prepared, signed, clear, safeguards, contingencies, protections designed long before her illness. She didn't ask my opinion. She didn't need it. She understood something her son never did. That loyalty isn't declared, it's proven over time. She knew the risks of power without patience. She had lived them. When the documents were complete, I returned them without comment. No gratitude, no reassurance. We both understood what they meant. From that moment on, the path was set, not toward conflict, but toward consequence. Her son sensed the shift, but misunderstood its direction. He thought momentum favored him. He didn't realize preparation had already passed him by. When the lawsuit finally arrived, it wasn't a surprise. It was confirmation. The lawsuit changed the air between us even before it changed anything on paper. People began speaking carefully around me, pausing before sentences, choosing words like they were stepping across thin ice. That's how rumors behave. They don't shout, they whisper. Executives who once came to me quietly now kept distance, not because they doubted me, because doubt is contagious and fear spreads faster than truth. My stepson understood that instinctively. He didn't confront me directly. He let uncertainty do the work. Board members received anonymous concerns. Advisors began asking questions that carried assumptions inside them. Audits were suggested for clarity. Clarity is rarely the goal when power is involved. I answered everything calmly, provided documentation, never defensive. That restraint irritated him more than anger ever could. He expected denial, expected panic, expected reaction. Instead, he saw patience, and patience to an insecure man feels like mockery. He started appearing at the office more often, staying late, sitting in meetings he had previously ignored, not to learn, to watch. Every glance felt measured, every silence misinterpreted. He wanted me to slip, to reveal urgency, to confirm the villain he had already decided I was. I gave him nothing. That's when he escalated. The first real humiliation came quietly. A request arrived asking me to temporarily step away from operational oversight. Until the legal matter is resolved, it was framed as neutral, professional, protective of the company. I read it once, then again. I agreed immediately. No protest, no explanation. The room didn't expect that. People who build narratives need resistance. Without it, their stories collapse under their own weight. My stepson interpreted my agreement as weakness, as surrender. He began rewriting history openly. In meetings, he spoke as if I had always been a background figure, a helper, a convenient assistant. Years of responsibility reduced to convenience. I watched people nod, not because they believed him, because belief is often less important than alignment. Meanwhile, decisions he pushed through began showing cracks, not instantly, but predictably. Contracts rushed, relationships strained, costs hidden under optimistic forecasts. I stayed silent. Not because I couldn't intervene, but because interference would have protected him from learning, and learning was the only justice that would last. Behind the scenes, pressure mounted. His lawyers sent demands, requests for depositions, attempts to provoke inconsistency. They were thorough, aggressive, confident. They didn't realize every answer I gave was already aligned with a plan written years earlier. That's the difference between reaction and preparation. The tension reached its peak when his mother asked for a family meeting. Not dramatic, not emotional, just a request. We sat across from each other in silence before she spoke. He presented his case calmly, controlled, carefully rehearsed. He spoke of loyalty, of inheritance, of protection. Then he looked at me, not with anger, with certainty. He believed this moment would force me to explain myself, to justify my presence. I didn't. She listened without interruption. Then she asked him a single question, not about the lawsuit, not about control, about responsibility. He hesitated. That hesitation told her everything. She ended the meeting without resolution, no verdict, no reassurance. That uncertainty disturbed him more than opposition ever could. From that day on, his actions grew sharper, more desperate. The lawsuit became public. Stories spread beyond the company. He thought exposure would corner me. He didn't understand something simple. Men who build quietly are never afraid of being seen. Only men who rush need the shadows. And by the time he realized how much ground he had already lost, the process he started could no longer be stopped. The turning point did not arrive with a victory. It arrived with restraint. That's something most people misunderstand about power. They expect it to announce itself, to demand attention. Real power waits. After the public filing, the company entered a phase of controlled tension. No chaos, no collapse, just strain. Budgets tightened, decisions slowed, people began double-checking each other's words. This is where experience matters. My stepson interpreted this slowdown as confirmation that he was right, that the company had been mismanaged, that my absence was already making a difference. He didn't notice the difference between speed and stability. He began inserting himself deeper into operations, not learning, directing. That shift revealed something important. People stopped asking questions, not because they understood his plans, but because they stopped trusting answers. That's when small errors multiplied. Nothing dramatic, just enough. Delayed approvals, misread clauses, assumptions made without verification, each one documented, each one allowed. I didn't interfere. I observed. Every system exposes its weaknesses under pressure. You only need patience to see them. Behind closed doors, my attorney and I reviewed timelines. Not to attack, to align. Because the goal was never to defeat him in court. It was to let the truth appear undeniable. And truth needs structure to be seen. The first visible shift happened during discovery. His legal team requested everything. Emails, internal memos, archived decisions. They expected chaos. What they found instead was order. Not because the company was perfect, but because accountability had always been practiced quietly. The lawyer leading his case began adjusting tone. Less aggressive, more careful. That told me everything. Confidence doesn't soften without reason. Then came the depositions. Executives spoke cautiously but consistently, not defending me, not accusing him, just describing how things had always worked. Process over personality. That consistency disrupted the narrative he had built. He tried to reframe it, claimed influence without authority, control without transparency. But every claim required proof, and proof requires alignment. That's where impatience betrayed him. He contradicted earlier statements, minimized responsibilities he had already claimed publicly, overstated involvement he couldn't document, not lies. Something worse, inconsistencies. Those don't shout, they echo. The real turning point came quietly, during a mediation session. No judge, no audience, just a table, legal counsel, and uncomfortable silence. His lawyer spoke first. Carefully. Measured. He suggested resolution. Compromise. That word had not appeared before. My stepson stared at him in disbelief. He wasn't ready for resolution. He wanted validation. That moment revealed the difference between them. One understood the weight of what was unfolding, the other still believed momentum was on his side. When it was my turn to speak, I said very little. I acknowledged concern, acknowledged emotion, acknowledged history. Then I stopped. Silence is unsettling when people expect defense. The mediator asked if I wanted to add anything. I didn't, because the work had already been done, not in that room, not in that moment. Years earlier, in documents prepared without resentment, in systems built without ego, in loyalty proven without demand. As the meeting ended, I saw doubt cross my stepson's face for the first time. Not fear, recognition. That what he was fighting was not a man, but a structure he didn't understand. And structures don't collapse from anger. They endure. Resolution doesn't arrive with celebration. It arrives with acceptance. By the time the next court date approached, the tone had already changed. Not publicly, privately. Phone calls became shorter, emails more cautious, statements carefully revised. People sensed the direction before it was declared. The asset freeze request was quietly withdrawn, not denied, withdrawn. That distinction mattered. It meant his legal team no longer believed the risk was worth defending. They framed it as strategy, efficiency, refocusing efforts. I recognized retreat when I saw it. My stepson did not. He interpreted the withdrawal as a pause, not a reversal. He still believed leverage favored him, but leverage only exists when pressure is mutual. Behind the scenes, board confidence shifted, not toward me, toward stability. They didn't want a victor. They wanted continuity. The company began correcting itself naturally. Processes slowed again. Oversight returned. Not because I demanded it, because people revert to what works when panic fades. I remained distant, intentionally. When resolution approaches, presence can look like interference. The final settlement discussions were brief. No grand negotiations, no dramatic offers, just acknowledgement. His lawyers proposed terms that protected the company first, not his pride, not his narrative. They requested dismissal without admission, a clean ending. I agreed, not because I needed closure, but because closure doesn't require victory. The lawsuit ended without headlines, without statements, without explanations. That silence disappointed some people. They wanted drama. They wanted justice to look loud. But justice doesn't need an audience. The real resolution happened elsewhere. His role within the company shifted, gradually, subtly. Responsibilities reduced, influence narrowed, not as punishment, as alignment. He found himself answering questions instead of asking them, reporting instead of directing. That reversal didn't break him, it revealed him, and revelation is harder to escape than defeat. The final conversation between us came weeks later, not planned, not mediated. He approached me quietly, without confidence or accusation. He didn't apologize. That's important. Apologies given under pressure rarely mean anything. Instead, he asked a question. Why I never fought back. I answered honestly. Because fighting would have made us equals in conflict. And this was never a fight. I told him trust isn't claimed. It's accumulated. That power doesn't announce itself. It proves itself over time. He listened. Not defensively, not proudly, just quietly. That silence was the real resolution. Because understanding, once formed, doesn't need agreement to exist. The world didn't change after the lawsuit ended. That's something people rarely expect. No sudden apologies, no public confessions, no dramatic reconciliation. Life simply continued. The company stabilized without announcement. Meetings returned to substance instead of tension. Decisions regained patience. People stopped watching each other for signs of collapse. That's how you know conflict is truly over. When attention moves forward again. I remained where I had always been, not at the center, not at the edges, useful, present, quiet. My stepson adjusted slowly. Pride doesn't disappear overnight. It recalibrates. He learned restraint the hard way, through consequence, not lecture. He began listening more than speaking, observing more than directing. I didn't guide him. I didn't mentor him. Some lessons must be absorbed without instruction, or they become performance instead of growth. His mother watched the shift with calm acceptance. She didn't intervene, didn't explain. She understood what I did. That forcing clarity only delays understanding. Forgiveness didn't arrive as a moment. It arrived as absence. The absence of resentment, the absence of urgency, the absence of the need to be right. One afternoon, I realized I no longer replayed the betrayal in my mind, not because it was forgotten, but because it no longer mattered. That's when I knew peace had settled. People often confuse forgiveness with reconciliation. They are not the same. Forgiveness is internal. Reconciliation requires readiness from both sides. I forgave him long before he understood why, because carrying anger would have made me smaller than the man I had chosen to be. The lawsuit had tried to define me as manipulative, as controlling, as hidden. In truth, it revealed something else. That patience is misunderstood until it is tested, that silence is mistaken for weakness by those who fear depth, and that dignity doesn't need defense. Years later, when people ask how I handled that betrayal so calmly, I tell them this. Revenge doesn't have to hurt to be effective. It doesn't have to humiliate to be complete.